Elias Ward had seen plenty of strange things living, alone on the far edge of the Arizona plains, but nothing prepared him for the desperate shouts that echoed across the mesas that afternoon. He had been following the tracks of a missing calf, weaving through sagebrush and dry creek beds, when the wind carried the voices again, deep, strained, and clearly calling for help. Elias tugged on his reins, uncertainty tightening his chest. Out here, trouble usually found people before they found each other. Still, he angled his horse toward the sound. The path grew steeper, scattered with loose stones that rolled under his boots when he dismounted to climb. At the top of the ridge, he felt the ground tremble slightly, and then he saw it, a narrow ravine where a huge section of rock wall had collapsed. Massive boulders lay shattered, dust still drifting in the air like the earth had only recently given way. And beneath one of those slabs were two enormous men, Apache twins, easily the tallest warriors Elias had ever seen. Their arms were pinned, their legs scraped and bruised, and their supplies lay smashed beneath debris. The larger twin, Takoda, gritted his teeth but stayed silent, while the other, Nodin, called again for help, though his voice was weakening. Elias didn't hesitate. He tied his horse to a scrub pine and moved toward them, testing each stone before putting his weight on it. The twins watched him closely, surprised that a stranger, especially a poor rancher with worn-out gear, would bother risking the unstable terrain. Elias used his dull crowbar to wedge smaller rocks aside. He looped his frayed rope around a heavier slab and hooked it to his horse's saddle, whispering encouragement as the old mare strained to pull it free. Hours passed. Sweat stung his eyes. His arms shook. More than once a stone slipped, nearly crushing his fingers. But he didn't stop. When the final heavy slab shifted enough for the twins to crawl out, both men stood towering over him, covered in dust and cuts but alive. Takoda placed a massive hand on Elias's shoulder, steady despite his injuries. "You risked yourself for us," he said quietly. Many would have walked away. Elias wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Didn't seem right to leave anyone trapped. As the sun dipped low, the desert night cold settled quickly. With their horses gone and no shelter nearby, Elias offered to camp with them. The three gathered around a small fire, flames flickering against the ravine walls. The twins whispered to each other in their language, glancing at Elias with an expression he couldn't read. When he finally asked what they were saying, Takoda answered softly, "You saved our lives. That means our paths are tied now." Elias didn't yet understand how deeply those words would matter. By sunrise the next day, Elias realized the twins were far more alert than they had seemed the night before. Even while injured, they moved with the quiet precision of warriors trained since childhood. As they packed up camp beside the canyon wall, Nodin knelt to study the ground, his sharp gaze tracing disturbed sand. "Someone passed through here at dawn," he murmured. "Boot tracks. Heavy ones." Takoda's jaw tightened. "They're following us." Elias frowned. The idea made little sense. He was a simple rancher, and the twins were travelers. Why would anyone bother chasing them across empty plains? But as he looked around the canyon, he felt it too, a strange stillness, like something watching them from just beyond sight. The twins explained while they walked. They had been traveling home after meeting with members of another Apache band when the rockslide trapped them. At first they thought it was a natural accident until they noticed drill marks on fallen stone. Someone had weakened the ridge before they passed under it. Someone who knew their route. Elias listened carefully. He had lived near Apache land his whole life, and he respected the people deeply. But he also knew there were outsiders, surveyors, scouting parties, and greedy opportunists who roamed these lands searching for anything valuable, maybe too many. Throughout the morning, they crossed winding trails only Elias knew. He guided them through dry creek beds hidden by brush, along narrow passes where footprints vanished against hard stone. The twins trusted his instincts, walking beside him like two silent guardians. But even as they moved carefully, the feeling of being watched never left. When the sun began to drop behind the canyon's edge, they found a sheltered alcove to rest for the night. The air cooled fast, shadows stretching wide across the desert. Elias gathered brush for a small fire, while the twins listened intently to the wind. Then Dakota held up a hand. Above them, small pebbles clattered down from the cliff. Elias looked up, heart pounding. A silhouette moved along the ridge, too tall for an animal, too slow to be a falling shadow. Someone was there, following their trail with deliberate steps. Nodin whispered, "Do not move. They don't know we spotted them." The three stayed silent, watching as the dark shape paused, scanned the canyon, then disappeared behind a cluster of rocks. Elias swallowed hard. "Why would they follow you?" Dakota answered quietly, "Because someone fears what we know." The rancher tightened his grip on his canteen. He had stepped into something dangerous, something bigger than a simple rescue. But he didn't regret it. "If trouble's coming," Elias said, voice steady despite the fear in his chest, "then we deal with it together." The twins exchanged a look, one of respect, not fear, and nodded. The night ahead would not be easy, but none of them intended to face it alone. Morning crept slowly into the canyon, turning the red hills gold as the sun rose. Elias hadn't slept much. Every sound in the dark made him wonder if the stranger on the ridge had returned. But Dakota and Nodin were already awake, studying the tracks left near their shelter. Their sharp eyes followed every indentation in the dust. "Same boots as yesterday," Nodin said. "Same weight." "One rider," Dakota nodded. "And he wanted us to notice. Look, he didn't hide his trail." Elias knelt beside them. The tracks weren't scattered or rushed. They were placed deliberately, leading toward the northern hills. It wasn't the behavior of someone hiding. It was someone confident, almost inviting them to follow. "Why leave such an obvious trail?" Elias asked. "To lure us," Dakota replied. "The question is why." They packed quickly and headed toward the direction of the prince. The land shifted as they traveled. Flatter plains broken by sudden cliffs, patches of dry grass swaying in the wind. As they walked, Nodin explained more of what they suspected. Weeks earlier, their tribe had noticed outsiders surveying land near holy sites. At first, the survey seemed harmless, just measurements and sketching, but soon tools changed, becoming drills and chisels, forming holes where no one had permission to dig. The twins had gone to investigate, and while returning, the rockslide struck. Elias listened closely, each detail fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. He understood now. Someone wanted access to land that didn't belong to them, and the twins were obstacles to that plan. By midday, they reached a hidden camp tucked between two red hills. Old canvas tents flapped in the wind. Empty crates lay scattered around, alongside broken tools and piles of mining equipment. Maps were pinned to a wooden board, maps marked with sharp red lines cutting through Apache land and circling mineral-rich spots. "This is the cause," Nodin muttered. "They want the ore beneath the sacred hills." "And they didn't want witnesses returning with proof," Dakota added. Elias sifted through the scattered papers, recognizing survey stamps from companies. He'd heard whispers about people known for taking land by force or trickery. Before they could gather more, the crunch of footsteps approached. Elias turned. Several men appeared from behind the hills, armed with gear and greed rather than sense. Their leader's expression twisted into disbelief at seeing the twins alive and irritation at seeing Elias standing with them. But instead of backing away, the three held their ground. The confrontation was tense, but the twins spoke with authority, explaining the laws and tribal boundaries. Elias backed them with the evidence in his hands, describing every illegal mark he'd found. The men realized they were outnumbered not by force, but by truth. By sunset, the intruders left, their plans exposed, and their claim ruined. Elias, Dakota, and Nodin gathered everything needed to present to the Apache Council.